ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ईश्वरोर्गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः. Om. So, yeah, thank you all for joining again. I expect a significantly lesser turnout today, which is a good thing because I intentionally scared a few folks away just because we definitely want to stay serious. We want to stay committed. We are here for the long haul. It's a long term commitment, not a short term fling. And what we are studying is a very serious subject matter. It is the teaching of Sri Bhagwan, it is a Bhagavad Gita, and it's going to take us a very long time to cover. And so there is no room for sporadic sort of, dilettante attendance that, okay, today I feel like joining, today I don't. Um, we work 40 hours a week. We can certainly add an extra hour to do the Bhagavad Gita. So thank you for joining once again. Thank you for your sustained commitment. And let me share my screen. And Anandji, if you don't mind, if you'd like to read, that way I can just focus on if anyone has questions. Okay. And
Sure.
Yashaswani ji, Vidya ji, please turn on your webcams. That is a requirement for the Satsanga. I just want to make sure that we are all interacting and I'm able to see everybody and I'm able to respond to any queries that anyone has because um, there's a lot of communication that happens non-verbally as well. So, one second. Is my screen visible?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Still not?
No, Prasanjit, you can't
Hmm.
see your screen.
One second.
Says Prashant is presenting, but we don't see any document yet.
Hmm. Interesting. Just a second. Okay. Now it should be presented.
Yeah, I see it
Okay.
now.
Yeah. Please, if you can read from here, and just a quick comment for the ones who are new to the Satsanga. I think a couple of you. We are on page 19 of some. This is just the first volume. Depending on which copy of the Gita you have, some people have 4 volumes of the Bhagavad Gita Home Study. Some people have 9 volumes. It The PDF version that I have is actually bifurcated, so we have 2 volumes, and the first one is about like 1100 pages. The second one's around the same length, and so we are still very much in the introduction. We've not even gotten into the context of the Gita. We are actually looking at the fundamentals of Vedanta. Okay, so if you would like to catch up, please feel free to send me a message afterwards on WhatsApp or on Google Chat, and I can send you the first 19 pages to revise. Anandji, please, if you can read, and the goal is that as we cover each section, or it could be a paragraph or 2 paragraphs. Then after that, we'll just open up for any questions that people may have, and I can attempt to address them.
The world is not the cause of your problem. To be displeased then requires nothing but yourself. It is not the world that displeases you. You are displeased with yourself. And whatever pleases you is going to be time bound, all of which we will see as we study the 18 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. Because any karma, any pleasure you, you pick up is limited by nature in terms of time, content, and degree, the one who is displeased remains in spite of occasional moments of pleasure. Therefore, we have now discerned the problem to be the conclusion about myself that I am displeased. This is a fact that is not going to be altered just because I pick up moments of pleasure. That I am insecure does not change merely because I acquire to give up certain securities. Thus, the only solution is to see myself secure and pleased with myself. But how is this possible? How is it possible to do this? If with all these insecurities, if with all these securities and pleasures, I am displeased with myself, how am I going to see myself pleased without them? This is where the teaching called Vedanta comes in and tells you that your problem is not one of lacking something, but of not knowing that you do not lack anything. It converts all one's pursuits into a pursuit of knowledge. In the vision of Vedanta, there is no reason for you to be displeased with yourself because you are totally acceptable to yourself, not in terms of attitude, but in reality. It is not a belief, it is a fact, a discoverable fact. Only something that can be discovered is a fact. And the discoverable fact here is that you lack nothing. You are totally free. This is a vision of you, and this is the heart of Vedanta, the heart of this teaching. The problem that I lack is thereby converted into ignorance, the cause of which I do not know for the time being. Until I come to know, the vision assumes the status of a promise.
There's quite a few things to unpack here, and so I'll just linger on this page for a few seconds to see if anyone has questions and would like to reflect on what we have, and then if not, I'll address a couple of uh, portions. So one very obvious thing that sticks out over here is that Vedanta treats you as a person who's completely acceptable to yourself. Insecurity is a fundamentally human problem. In fact, it is the fundamental human problem, and it is also fundamentally human at the same time. Animals don't have insecurity, plants don't have insecurity. Insecurity is usually a dissatisfaction that is centered on oneself. It cannot be a dissatisfaction that is centered on anything else except the self. If I'm insecure, I feel that there is a lack within myself and not that there is a lack outside in the world. That I lack is the problem. Just a second. That I lack is the problem, and not the fact that there is something lacking in the world or there is something defective in the world. All problems begin with the sense that I lack, that I am small, I am limited, I am measurably a loser in life, right? And this can be across multiple domains. It could be that, okay, I feel like a failure at the family level. I feel like a failure in my career. I feel I'm not rich enough. I feel I don't have enough friends. I feel I'm not healthy enough. I feel that I'm suffering. I feel that people make me feel, small and belittled at all times. This is all, on account of insecurity. And so, on the one hand, we have this very human experience of feeling insecure. And on the other hand, Vedanta makes a promise. And that's why if you see the part below over here, the vision assumes the status of a promise. Vedanta makes a promise that you are the whole, Purnam, that there is nothing that you lack. And so, how does one make that leap? Because, let's take the standpoint of an individual who has no exposure to teachings. Let's say, you don't know what is Bhagavad Gita. Maybe you heard of it. That, oh, Bhagavad Gita, I've heard of it. It's Krishna Bhagavan Arjuna Samvada. Maybe some basic knowledge of it is there. So superficial level of knowledge because we are born and brought up in this culture. But there is a great amount of, shall we say, privilege that we have on account of being born in a Hindu family as well. Because some of these things we take for granted, but at the same time, some of these things are obvious to us too. It is not very difficult to invoke Shraddha in a person who is born in this Vaidika, Astika family background. And so there is this little bit of sense of Shraddha that we have that, okay, the Gita is considered sacred by my parents, by my grandparents, by my great, 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 great grandparents, by the people that I respect, by the pujaris in the mandir, by the ones who come and perform my pujas, by the sannyasis, and therefore there must be something to it. There must be something of quality, something of value, and it will not be khokla. And you'll say this word that khokla means like empty, just an empty vessel. There must be some content, some quality to it. And so, if Krishna Bhagwan is making certain assurances to Arjuna, it is my duty to see it not as a mere philosophy or somebody giving a pep talk. Today, if you're playing football, this obviously in all countries, but in US, the concept of pep talk is a big thing. So you have a football match or a basketball match or a baseball match, any game for that matter, and you have these players in the locker room. They're all assembled over there. They've taken their showers, and they've sort of come prepared to win the battle, because again, game is just an analogy to a battle. I'll come to that in a moment. And so then comes in the coach. Yeah, then he tries to rile up the entire team, and then he'll project the opponents as a sort of enemy, that, oh, we're going to kill them today, we're going to pound them today, we're going to run over them today. They're going to wish that they never showed up on the field, we're going to completely win the day, carpe diem, and all of these things, right? And so the coach is giving a proper pep talk, and there might be a lot of exaggeration and hyperbole involved in that pep talk as well. And so a person who doesn't have that shraddha in the Gita, and sometimes it could be a person even born in a Hindu family, unfortunately, due to some pap karma that's binding us. Some Hindus don't even have Shraddha in the Vedic teachings. So they might say that, oh, maybe Krishna Bhagwan, which they've turned from Bhagwan, they've turned him into Mr. Krishna, that there is this Mr. Krishna who's a smart talker. He's a sharpshooter. He knows how to talk. He's a good orator. He can speak very well. He has a forked tongue. And so he can make people do what they want. And maybe he's manipulating Arjuna. That could be one interpretation that somebody may have, that maybe Krishna has, I'm not saying Bhagwan, this Mr. Krishna has some ulterior motives. Maybe he wants Duryodhana to be destroyed so that he can capture some of the territories. You can come up with multiple creative, interpretations to this thing. And so his whole, and this is what Wendy Doniger, a so-called Indologist, says in her writings. She says that the whole agenda of the Gita was for Krishna to goad Arjuna into battle for political ends. I mean, what kind of stupid people we have in a society, I don't know. But anyway, this is also one interpretation that somebody's come up with. But now for people like us, hopefully we have been endowed with a certain amount of punya karma, that we have the happy baggage of Shraddha, that we look upon Krishna as Bhagwan and not as Mr. Krishna. And so if something comes out of the mukha, of the mouth of Bhagwan, then one doesn't ask the question, is this true? If it's coming from Bhagwan, it has to be true. If it's coming from you and I, maybe there's some problem, maybe. But Bhagwan's words are Satya Vachanam, because it is Bhagwan's words alone that are manifest as the cosmos. They say that the Vedas are again just nothing but the thought of Ishvara. The whole Veda, to talk about Rig Veda, Yajur, whatever you talk about, this is Ishvara's breath. And it has manifested and it has appeared before the rishis to present to us. In the same manner, the Bhagavad Gita is a smriti. It is a smriti grantha. It is a work where the same teachings of the Upanishads have been revealed to Arjuna on account of the teaching of Sri Krishna. Sri Krishna here plays a role of a guru. Now, a guru does not speculate. A guru does not interpret. A guru's job is simply to make the Shishya see the truth for what it is. Therefore, what the guru says, and again, there are certain indications here which I'm expanding upon, that this is not a pep talk. It is not just in terms of an attitude that, oh, Vedanta says, oh, don't be displeased with yourself. Okay, this is a self-help book. You are good, you are lovable. Today, this whole notion of self-love has become a big deal in local self-help section of the library. But here, it's not like just pep talking you into feeling good about yourself. It's not feel good. It is actually unfolding a certain reality that you are the whole. And so for the person who has Shraddha in Sri Krishna Bhagavan as both Ishvara and as Guru, Vande Krishna, Vande Jagat Guru, right? You say to Krishna Bhagavan. So to this person, We offer our Shraddha such that we give ourselves. No, we can't be arrogant enough to say, I'll give Ishvara an opportunity to teach me. Rather, we give ourselves the opportunity to learn from Ishvara. That is the attitude. That I bow down, I lay my ego and all of my conceit at the doorstep of the mandir before I enter the mandir. That is what you do when you remove your chappals. Removing the chappal means you're removing other baggage also. And when we go to Ishvara, when we go to the Bhagavad Gita, we lay all of our preconceived notions about what we think is the speculative truth, and we open ourselves to be revealed that finer truth that Ishvara has to present to us as Guru. So that is the vision of the Gita. Gita, it is also the vision of Vedanta, because the Gita is the saram, is the amsha, is the very nectar of all of the Upanishadic teachings. That's why, the Sarvo Upanishado Gavo, Dugdha Gopalananda. So this Upanishads, they're all the milk, but the content of that milk, the main part of it, the ghee, is distilled in the form of the Bhagavad Gita, and that is what Krishna Bhagavan gives to Arjuna. Also, one thing to note is the Gita will never ever say anything that is in contradiction to the Vedas, because this whole, shall we say, for lack of a better word, well, all of our Shastras are in conformity to the vision of the Vedas. Suppose, and I'm just giving a general tip, that suppose you have an individual, some modern day guru, perhaps. Some people are ill this week, so I'm not going to give any names out. But let's say there are individuals who claim that they are teaching outside of the purview of scriptures, but they are only teaching from their own wisdom. Then we have to ask a simple question. If you are teaching from your own wisdom, if you are not associated with a sampradaya, if you don't belong to an uninterrupted lineage or a parampara, how can I be sure of what you're saying? So there are two ways around this. One is I have to be smarter than you to be able to be sure of what you are saying, whether it is true or not. Now, if I am smarter than you, then there is no point of me learning from you, because I am anyway smarter. If I'm not as smart as you, then I have no way of knowing whether what you're saying is meaningful or not. So that way, in both ways, there's a conundrum. If I'm smarter, I don't need you. And if I'm dumber, then I can never be sure that what you say is the truth. And therefore, the commentary on the Mundaka Upanishad, as Sri Adi Shankaracharya unfolds, he says, asampradaya with murkhavat upekshaniya. You as though pronounce an asampradaya with, a fool, a murkha, even if that person claims to have all the wisdom in the seven worlds. You dismiss that individual and do not bother studying from any individual who does not have an affiliation with an uninterrupted parampara. Not a parampara that was started 50 years back or 20 years back or 30 years back. No, uninterrupted means time immemorial. You cannot trace back a historical origin. There's no start date, there's no end date. It is a parampara, it is a lineage. Can I say that, oh, my family parampara began 5 generations ago? No, there is no beginning to my parampara. As a member of society, I have great 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 grandfather. We go up. There'll never be an end. You'll just keep going up and up and up. Then of course, then you can get into this whole evolution territory. But you get what I'm saying. One can never really say there's a start date for one's lineage. Likewise, you cannot assign a start date to the parampara. And so this is what the whole teaching of the Vedas is. And so that's, in different parts of the Gita, Krishna Bhagavan also suggests that the teaching that I'm giving you, O Arjuna, is nothing new. It is only a recap of all the things that I've taught to Vivaswan and to Manu and, all the way back. And so the Gita is the truth and the Vedas are the truths. And this truth is not a theory, it is not an interpretation, it is a reality teaching. It is a teaching of reality. And that is what is indicated over here, right? Not in terms of an attitude, but in terms of reality. So it's not a feel-good solution. It is who you are. What else can I think of? I suppose, yeah, that's what I have to cover on this part. Any questions, or shall we proceed to the next one? Okay, there's maybe one more point I can touch upon over here. It says, see, It tells you your problem is not one of lacking something. In life, 99%, well, for all intents and purposes, 100% of our problem is that I am trying to gain a foothold over life in a way that makes me more than what I am. I want to be more than what I am. If I have 50 lakhs, I want to have 1 crore. If I have 1 crores, I want to have 5 crores. If I have 5 crores, I want 15 crores. Chalo, at some point you may say I have enough money, then you want something else. You The fact that we are a wanting person doesn't go away. And how can I fulfill that want? There are two ways to do it. One is you get what you want fulfilled. The second is you rationalize what you want in the vision of the teaching, and then the want is gone, is disappeared. And now, which approach is superior? That is the question over here. Puju Samji says you can ask for another head on top of your head. You can have an extra set of heads if you want, but you can't ask for another head on top of both shoulders because you already have that. I have a head and it's on top of two shoulders. Can there be a second head that will also be on top of two shoulders? No. Then you'll have to replace the first one. You can have a head on top of it, you can have it one on the side, but then it will be on one shoulder only. Or you can have it on the other shoulder, it will be here. But you can't have another head on top of both shoulders because you can't have what you already are. So Puju Samaji explains that you are what you seek. That which we seek is what we already are. Put a bookmark on this. I'll come back to this point. So whenever we acquire things in the world, we acquire through action. If I have to gain more money, I need to work harder. Maybe I need to make it big in the stock market. Maybe I need to do something that I need to skill up, maybe, right? I need to go get another degree, or I need to do some apprenticeship or whatever. Something that I need to do. That do leads to gain. I cannot gain without doing. Action leads to result. Therefore, if I have to be more than what I am, that means I have to act accordingly. So far, so good. That makes sense. Now, are my actions limited or limitless? Anyone?
Limited.
Limited. Actions are limited. Each action is limited, and the total set of actions that I can perform is also a limited number. It's a finite number. And therefore, if I have to gain the infinite or the whole, that implies that if I have to gain it through action, I'll have to do an infinite number of actions to gain the infinite, which doesn't make sense. So therefore, if one is the whole, and if the vision of the Vedanta teaching is that you are the whole, you are Purnam, you are complete, there is nothing that you lack, then in order to be all that there is, I will have to do an infinite amount of actions, which is not possible. It's a philosophical problem, and it is a physical problem for sure. It is both physically impossible and it is philosophically, meaningless. So therefore, if you see that there are different philosophies, again, going back to some very famous teacher 100, years back, oh, there are 4 yogas. Doesn't work that way. You can choose whichever yoga you want to gain moksha. Doesn't work that way. Moksha is Vastu Tantram or Purusha Tantram. It has to be Vastu Tantram. Purusha Tantram means that which can be gained through my Purushartha. Purushartha means what? My own free will, my own actions. Purushartha actually, can mean effort. But what is effort? Effort is a vector quantity for those who are physically, sort of have a good sense of physics. You have a scalar quantity and you have a vector quantity. A scalar quantity has no direction, it has only magnitude. So, for example, if you talk about height is a scalar quantity, but weight is a vector quantity, because weight is always directed towards the source of gravity, but height could be you arranged anywhere, right? So there's no arrow of direction associated with it. So when we talk of effort or purushartha, it is a vector, which means it requires both a certain magnitude of action and also a certain force of will directed in a certain direction. That is what is purushartha. So I can perform the same set of actions, but the way I direct those actions will vastly change, sometimes dramatically change the result of those actions. Simple example, Bhagavad Gita. Soldier A is in the Kaurava army. Soldier B is in the Pandava army. They are both fighting. This guy has a spear, that guy has a spear. This guy has backup sword or a dagger, that guy also has a backup sword. This guy is trained under the same teacher, that guy is trained under the same teacher. The direction in which they are utilizing their skill sets will lead to two very different results. That's why Arjuna goes to one place after Mrityu and Duryodhana goes to a different place. Okay, so actions are also determined by, or rather, the results of actions are determined both by the magnitude or the sheer, I guess, um, input of your actions, along with the direction in which you are orienting those actions. All right. So that is just an aside which just came to my mind. So when we talk about moksha, moksha being the sense that I am the whole, that I am free, that there is no limitation that's associated with me, how can that give rise, how can that be a result of, rather, limited actions? It can't. Doesn't make sense. So then we have to question the whole premise, that how can moksha be gained? We just talked about the illogicality of moksha through actions. So moksha has to be gained through knowledge only, because there are only two modes through which we operate in this world. One, we talked about this last time. The first mode is that we act in the world. We act through actions, karma. And the second is you know. If you look at yourself as a living entity, as a jiva, these are the only two modes that we have. And in fact, they are very nicely represented by the organs of action and the organs of knowledge, the jnanendriyas and the karmendriyas. The karmendriyas are, actions are performed through the karmendriyas, and knowledge is gained through the jnanendriyas. We only do or we know. We do, we know, we do, we know. Doing does not lead to moksha. Doing can lead to a prepared mind, an antakarana that is supple, that is nimble, that is able to attain a certain level of maturity wherein knowledge can be embedded. Jnana nishtha can take place with the background of karma that conditions one's mind. Okay, everybody with me so far? With the background of karma, karma yoga particularly, uh, um, with the background of yeah, Shashikumarji, I think it might be used because I see others nodding their heads when I'm speaking. So I think it might be a connection issue. Okay. So now when we talk about jnana, karma can give you what you don't have. Apraptasya praptihi. And please, Shrikantji, feel free to interject if my Sanskrit is messed up at any point. You're always welcome. So apraptasya praptihi means gaining that which is not gained. It may sound like, what is this point? Like, you will gain only that which is not gained. No, why will you gain something which is gained? We'll come to that. Everything that we do in life as a pursuit is only to gain that which we don't have. We talked about this: money, friendships, relationships, whatever it may be. I don't have it, I want it, I perform actions, I get it. I don't have it, I want it, I perform actions, I get it. The cycle continues. Don't have, want, actions, results. Repeat. Next thing. Keep moving on, moving on, moving on. You keep moving on. Is this going to lead to moksha? It can't. And we discussed why. The next thing that we receive, or that we operate, is jnana. In fact, you don't really operate jnana. Jnana takes place. You never operate jnana. You operate your actions in a certain manner. I can do a bit more, I can do a bit less. But have you noticed that when it comes to jnana, there is no control that I have over knowledge taking place? Absolutely none. Suppose you look at the screen. Do you have any control over what you see? You can't. The moment your eyes are open and your sense of sight is connected with the object of vision, which is, let's assume the screen that you're looking at, then knowledge takes place spontaneously. You have to do no action whatsoever. Therefore, knowledge and action are two distinct and independent modalities which don't have any overlaps. Like, so far so good. No, actions or karma. Now I'm going to just use karma and jnana. Karma is performed to gain apraptasya praptihi. What I don't have is gained through actions. Jnana, when it comes to self-knowledge, is praptasya praptihi. Gaining that which I already have. And that is why we have to use that distinction, apraptasya and praptasya, because they are qualifying the two modalities that we operate, knowledge and action, jnana and karma. Now, what do I already have? I am who I am. It's a bit like, I think Popeye was a jnani. I am what I am, and that's all that I am. Except that he took himself as a sailor, and we take ourselves as Ishwar or Brahma. So anyway, I think Popeye was just one Vedanta pravachan away from Jnanam, probably. Now, what I am what I am, and that is to be discovered, not to be gained. I can't gain who I am because that is what I am. In fact, what I am is the one who doesn't know who he is, and therefore he is in pursuit of the things that he doesn't have. I'll repeat that again. What I am is the person who doesn't know who he is, and therefore is in search of those things that he think will complete him. But when I discover who I am, then there is no more searching. That is why I again close with Pujya Samri's statement: the seeker is the sought. You are what you seek. If I am seeking fullness, that fullness I am alone, and the discovery of this fullness is the fruit of the teaching of Vedanta. And that fruit of the teaching of Vedanta is the same as the promise of Vedanta. Over here, both the means and the end are the same. The promise of Vedanta is that you are the whole, and the fruit of Vedanta, when that journey has been undertaken successfully by us, and when we commit to this path to gain this wisdom, this knowledge, that is also the result. And that is why Vedanta is this beautiful teaching where there is no spoiler. Pujya Samji says that, I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but at the start of the 3.5 year course, please buy it if you haven't already. But at the start of the 3.5 year course, Pujya Samji says that the beautiful thing about this is that the same thing I'll say on day one will also be the same thing I'll say when the course ends. Because you are not going to be any better than what you are when you start. You may think that you are less than what you are, but what you are does not change over the course. The only thing that will change is your perception of who you are. What you are does not change. Your perception of what you are is what changes. And that is what we call getting rid of avidya. Therefore, Vedanta is not so much about gaining knowledge, but it is ridding oneself of the avidya of taking myself to be what I am not, which is called mithya pratyaya. It is a wrongful identification. It's like mithya grahanam, so to speak. Okay, so I think I've covered this piece in detail. Perhaps if Srikanji can read the next portion, but I'll just take a pause. Any questions so far? Because I know we've been through a lot, and this is really in a nutshell what the vision of Vedanta is, what we explored.
Prashantji, I have a question about the phrase. Could you scroll up a little bit?
Mhm.
Yeah, so here it says, yeah, not in terms of attitude, but in reality. So I'd like to just understand this by breaking it down a little. So if I consider two scenarios, one scenario, I am generally lacking in some aspect, and I don't really understand Vedanta, and I'm constantly unhappy about something or the other in my life. The other situation where, let's say, I know I've understood Vedanta, but I'm still lacking as far as those problems are concerned. Let's say I'm looking for a job or something, I'm still lacking, but I still have the knowledge of Vedanta. So in these two scenarios, isn't my attitude actually changing because of what I've understood through Vedanta? In one case, I'm lacking, but I'm unhappy. In the other case, I'm lacking, but somehow I'm happy or finding terms to be okay with the lack. So Isn't there also a difference in attitude? So I'm just trying to understand how this not in terms of attitude is really the case.
Excellent question. Excellent question. And the answer is also very beautiful, as Pujya Samaji would present it. Usually, when we talk about sanity and insanity, what do we really mean? Sanity is when a person's mind is aligned to reality. The more distanced a person is in their perception or attitude from reality, the greater is their degree of insanity, right? Now, the average Joe in your mailroom or some anywhere, the average person, the average individual is a little insane. Every single one of us is insane to different degrees. When you're insane enough, then you get institutionalized to a mental hospital. And when you're just insane enough to, I suppose, match the insanity level of the average person, you're on that, you're somewhere in between on that normal distribution. You don't fall with outside of too many standard deviations. You're like within a one or two standard deviations. You're accepted as part of mainstream society with all of the insecurities and complexes that we deal with. But we are all a little insane because we are not in touch with reality. What is reality? Ishavasyam idam sarvam. So now there are two ways that we can deal with attitudes. Suppose you have a self help book, and the self help book says, "Oh, you are a very wise old soul, and you have journeyed, and you picked up so much wisdom, and one day at the end, at the end of your life, you're going to go and meet your maker, and then you're going to be in this beautiful, celebrated place, a very heavenly spot, and it's going to have the best beaches in the world with blue sand and orange water, and everything will be like very different." And it'll be so vivid, it'll be like a dream, and you're going to live forever in the eternity. Now somebody may change their attitude based on that reality that is unfolded in the book, and they may say that, "Oh, why am I sweating the small stuff? Why am I bothered so much with life? Life is a little blimp. It's a blip, rather. It's a blip in time. You come and you go, and there's a flash. It's a flash in the pan, and life comes to an end. And then I'll enjoy this eternity." That's what Christianity and Islam offer, by the way, right? This permanent heaven, that once you die you're going to be rejoined with Allah or God, and then there you will stay forever, and you'll reap the benefits of being a devout follower of XYZ. Now a person with that attitude may also improve their life. I'm not saying no. He may be like, "Okay, chalo, I need to earn the grace of this God so that they will open the pearly gates so that I will be let in with the cool crowd, so that I can chill out with God, and I can get a front row seat, and I'll live eternity ever after in a very blissful manner." That can also lead to a different attitude in life. Somebody may be promised that, okay, if you live a good life, then you are going to achieve a certain result. That is also an attitude change. But in this case, the attitudinal change is non-conformal to actual reality, but rather conformal to a false promise. It just so incidentally happens to make you a better person in some cases, not in all cases, because we have seen. I don't want to sully the beautiful discussion, but yes, in some cases, a devout follower of a certain religion can be a good human being because they want to achieve that promised end, the promised land. Okay. In our case, the reality that we offer is not a promotion brochure or some vacation ka kuch pamphlet or something. It is the reality itself. It is the blueprint of reality. It is the actual base reality of realities. It is who you are. It is oneself alone. It is the Atma. And when one aligns one's attitude with actual reality as opposed to a promoted version of reality, that attitude follows the reality, and it is not an attitude that's born in a vacuum. And therefore, your attitude will be anchored to that reality. And as that, how shall we say, as one's conviction and as one's nishtha in reality, which is the knowledge of the self in one's Brahma Vidya, Atma Vidya, that grows, the attitude will begin to meld with the truth. And at some point, there is no distance between the attitude and the reality. And that is when you see that this person is 100% sane. The only person who is completely sane is a jnani. We are all a little bit insane. And we are all a little bit insane to the extent that somebody says something to us that hurts us. Something happens to our jobs or our children or our parents or whatever, and it causes us pain and anguish. And we are all a little insane because we are all out of touch with reality. And what does reality mean here? It is you, it is the self. So, in what Puja Sambhaji is explaining here is that this is not just some pep talk I'm giving. That's what he's saying. It's not just in terms of like an attitude that, oh, you have to go and win the match, but it's more in terms of understanding and having conviction in reality so that the attitude follows the reality, not the other way around.
So can we say that in the case of Vedanta, basically knowledge of the reality uh, essentially facilitates a change of attitude. Change of attitude is kind of a byproduct of knowing the reality. Can we say that?
You can say that, yes. And that is a more mature outlook, which is not to say that in the beginning, see, that is presupposing that one has a sense of what the reality is. But suppose one has not studied Vedanta or one doesn't understand Vedanta or that exposure is not there, then what happens is even otherwise, the whole Karma Kanda teaching and all of these other things that you'll see in the Puranas and all, it is still going to try to give you a better attitude because what happens is sometimes, not sometimes, but definitely a good, clean, dharmic attitude, a dharmic orientation, because an orientation is an attitude, will facilitate Vedanta to enter your life. It is due to my own punya karma, my for the sake of this, my good attitude and my good actions. Again, good I'm putting this way because we don't deal in good and bad. We deal in layers of complexities, and dharma is complex. So suppose somebody comes and stabs you in your abdomen. You can't say that's good or bad. It depends on who's stabbing you. If it's a ruffian on the street, then yes, that's pap karma. But if it's a doctor who's trying to remove a kidney stone or trying to remove a tumor from your belly, that is a punya karma. So the same action, depending on the attitude and the intention behind it, can have different results. And anyway, so over here, what happens is having a good attitude is encouraged. But here, what Puja Samji says is, I'm not just selling the attitude because the attitude is subservient to the reality and not the other way around. And when that attitude, when the punya karma, when the sukruta karma is, or rather the sukruta or the karma phala is sufficiently ripened based on all of my good deeds and your good deeds and everybody else's good deeds, we get in touch with a guru, we get in touch with Shastra, we get in touch with an environment, or rather, we create an environment around us where your family members, your friends begin to encourage us to move in this direction. And not only that, but many of our bad habits or our let's say our attitudes which are not conducive to the teaching fall to the wayside. And that's why this Mahamrityunjay mantra is very beautiful. Urva rukmyo bandhanan mrityor mukshiya mamritaat. Urva rukmyo. So again, I think we might have discussed this once before. But in most cases, you will see that you have a branch and the fruit falls away from the branch. But over here, in the case of these creepers, whether it's a watermelon or a pumpkin or cucumber, uh, the branch withers away and recedes, but the fruit is left in the same place. So our whole life, we are trying to purify ourselves and struggle to say that, Array, I wish my bad habits, I'm able to leave my bad habits. I wish I'm able to leave some of these, dispositions that I have, which are not conducive to my growth behind. But here, through this prayer, through reaching out to Ishvara, through building a relationship with Ishvara, the disposition itself falls away. You don't have to give it up because what it brings is vairagya. That is why they say that when you even worship Lord Shiva, it gives rise to a lot of vairagya because Shiva Bhagwan is more representative of like this vairagya tattva. He's alone and he's meditating on Kailasha, and he's closed his eyes and he's like the very epitome of a sannyasi of sorts. And then of course you also have the grihastha version of Shiva with Parvati Pate that way. But that version of Shiva where he's a vairagi, a total vairagi, that actually gives rise to a lot of dispassion where many of our um, bad habits just fall away. And that is represented through the through the Mahamrityunjay mantra. Very beautiful. Um, One thing I also want to bring to attention, I have seen this. I have, I have, not that I have done this for a very long time, but I have been sufficiently active through different satsanga groups to be able to state with some authority that many times when people come to Vedanta, they think that they can bypass Ishvara. Arey, this is just knowledge of the self. Why do I need to have Ishvara as a broker or a middleman over here? That is a very poor attitude, in fact. Because without Ishvara, there is nothing. Ishvara is, Pratyaksha Brahma. But this whole study of Brahma Vidya is present in front of us as Ishvara Shrishti. If one cannot see every kankan of Shrishti as a manifestation of Ishvara, then Brahma Vidya will never happen. One can never transcend or bypass Ishvara and say that I am only interested in self knowledge. Because then you are much better off not studying the Gita. So, a relationship, this Swamiji also emphasized that building a strong, meaningful relationship with Ishvara is critical because Ishvara is Brahman. That distinction between Shaguna Brahma, Nirguna Brahma is a very nice intellectual game that we all love to play. And sometimes, some people will try to make it sound technical so that they appear, I suppose, intellectual or whatever. But this whole distinction between Shaguna and Nirguna is as meaningless as trying to talk about the sun without its light. If you have a sun, then how can you have not have sunlight? Saguna Brahma, Nirguna Brahma distinction is only in the head, but it should not be in the heart. All that there is Ishvara, Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam. That's why the Upanishads did not only say that Sarvam Khalvedam Brahma, they also said Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam. Because Brahma is Akshara, when you talk about Brahma, is Akshara Brahma also, and it is, Karana Brahma also, and Karya Brahma also. Therefore, these distinctions should never be in place. I just want to say this because some people try to dodge Ishvara. Because we all come with a certain attitude. Again, talking about attitude. Some people have the attitude of an agnostic or an atheist, but they find Vedanta very compelling. They say, oh, this is such a beautiful philosophy. I can study about myself and I don't have to bother with Ishvara. You have to bother with Ishvara because Ishvara is all that there is. And the fact that you think you don't have to bother with Ishvara, that vritti also came from Ishvara only. Because Ishvara is the karma phala data. So every single thought that comes to us is a gift, is a fruit of Ishvara being the karma phala data. So wherever you look, there's Ishvara only. You can't miss Ishvara. And if you miss Ishvara, you missed Vedanta. Okay. Any general questions before we move to the next section? I just want to, I suppose, get a pulse and see where people are because I know we've covered a lot and maybe we shouldn't get into more material for now. Okay. Should we do one more section and then close? Is that okay? All right. And let me share my screen once more. And once again, I just emphasize, like, folks who are on the call, please, like, keep your thing turned on. It's the appropriate thing to do. Okay, so now we were on this page, right? Yeah, Shikanji, if you want to read.
You are the problem, you are the solution. Vedanta defines the problem as not what you lack, but that you lack, and says that you are the solution because you are the problem. There are two types of problems. One has its solution outside the problem, and the other has its solution within the very problem itself. The solution to the problem of feeling cold, for example, is outside the problem in the sense that you have to cover yourself, go to the fireside, or go out into the sun. You may even decide to go to the Bahamas. When the problem to a solution to a problem is outside, it means that you have to do something to solve the problem. If hunger is your problem, you have to feed the hunger by eating food, which is also outside. The solution to a jigsaw puzzle, however, is within the problem, within the puzzle itself. because the solution is within the problem. There is no problem, in fact. The only problem is you, and the solution is also you. When you do not understand something, it is a problem for you. Whereas when you understand, there is no problem. The understanding is the solution. In the vision of Vedanta, you have no problem, in fact. Then you may ask, how can I recognize that I do not have a problem? This seems to be one more problem to add to the ones I already have. But is it? One problem is not there, the problem of self non acceptance. I'll read that again. One problem is not there, the problem of self non acceptance. Because in the vision of Vedanta, the self is acceptable. What else do you want really? The only problem any human being has is self non acceptance. Therefore, you are the problem and you are the solution. Now, your pursuit becomes one of knowing yourself, and it can be a game, fun all the way. This then is the teaching. A discriminative analysis of dharma, artha, and kama leads one to a certain fundamental human problem. Once this human problem has been discerned, you will take special steps to resolve it, even though you may continue to pursue artha, kama, and dharma. The solution to this original fundamental problem is called moksha.
So beautiful this is. Any questions? See, it's so nicely explained over here, because usually one feels helpless. In Vedanta, helplessness is, addressed in a relative and in an absolute sense. It's just astounding when you think about it. You know, sometimes when you're ailing from a problem, from anything, it could be a disease or some issue, psychological or otherwise. What troubles us the most is not knowing what the problem is, right? The uncertainty is what really gets you. But once you have a sense of what the problem is, even if it's something terrible, yes, it's not the best news to wake up to, but in some sense, there's also relief. There's a relief to know and to get out of that uncertain area. The zone of uncertainty is a problem. Suppose, this is why Jyotisha is also very powerful. Uh, Jyotisha does not, I mean, of course, there are certain nivaranas, certain cures to predicaments that we have in our charts. You can perform pujas and you can do certain things at certain times to um, lessen the negative impact of karma by virtue of adhering to the Jyotisha Shastra. But Jyotisha is like a headlight that allows you to see the tree up front so that you don't crash your car into it. It doesn't make the tree disappear. Rather, it informs your decisions in a manner that lead you to steer the other way. It's more of a steering mechanism. It's more of a foresight that makes you act differently, knowing that there is something that you might be faced with. When it comes to Vedanta, or any other thing for that matter, but in particular to Vedanta now, recognizing the inherent limitations of artha, kama, dharma, and gaining an appreciation of moksha, even if moksha is not there, which we will see that moksha is all this praptasya praptihi only. It is who you are, but assume that a person is not rooted in this knowledge yet, but they know that there is this promise that's being made of moksha, and they begin to appreciate the limitations of the other purusharthas. In that pursuit alone, there is a little bit of relief. A little bit of relief that I'm beginning to see in the distance what this promise is all about. And I know that the life that I've been leading so far, that my callous lifestyle, my inconsiderate approach to, I suppose, thinking that I can improve myself through actions and whatnot, all of these things begin to slip away. And because of the relief that moksha is this guiding light that I need to pursue. At some point, as the wisdom develops, as it grows, as this nishtha firms up, you will see that that guiding light, which is presented as a purushartha, is nothing but you. It is your own light that you are following, but it is who you are. And so that is the ultimate, thing that where it resolves into one's own being, one's own self, where moksha and the self are the same. Because to recognize that I am free alone is freedom. Then where do I have to seek freedom? Is it there? Is it there? No, it is who I am. I am free. And the reason I am free is because I was never limited. And if I was never limited, even the word freedom falls away. Freedom is the antonym of somebody who's bound. You bound and you're free. You're bound and you're free. If I was bound, then I can become free. If I was never bound, then what does it even mean to be free? So moksha also liberates us from this misconception that you have to attain moksha, because you were never somebody who never had moksha. Moksha is always there. It's a thing. It's a reality. It is you. So it is nice, this sort of interplay where you have relative freedom when you pursue moksha, and you have absolute freedom when you recognize that it is who you are. But again, this may sound very compelling when one speaks of it, but this nishtha has to be firm. One has to abide in the self. It's not like a wordplay, because words are only indicators of meaning. Words are indicators of meaning. Words are inert. The meaning is what is full of life and dynamism. And that meaning is the thing that percolates the buddhi, and it is the thing that destroys avidya. Not the word, but the meaning. So one can sometimes be. I was under a delusion many years ago that, oh, I've been exposed to this teaching, and therefore I think I'm free now. No, 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 no. The exposure to the teaching cannot be mistaken for the fruit of the teaching. We can all be exposed, and we can all rant passages from the Upanishads and Shruti in cocktail parties and whatnot. But that is not what the meaning is. The meaning is like the root of a big oak tree that sends its roots down to the very foundations of one's buddhi, and those roots completely split apart avidya, and it's soaked in uh, jnana nishtha happens deep down in the buddhi itself. That is Vedanta. That is moksha. So that distinction I would draw. I think we've covered a lot. I'll close off the session and open the floor for any general Q&A for the next 5 to 10 minutes. And if there are none, then we'll stop recording. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. So, any questions? It need not be just from the passages we've covered, but even more generically from Vedanta.
Prashantji, I have a quick question.
Mhm.
So, in the age of social media, I do notice that a lot of teenagers are afflicted with insecurities and dissatisfaction about not just their abilities, but also their physical appearances and things like that. Does that also still fall under the realm of uh, what I lack and I need to overcome and identify that I am complete?
Yes. Every insecurity is rooted in a sense of being incomplete. Every insecurity. And as you rightly pointed out, it is hastened by the advent of social media. And in fact, I think you probably have Jonathan Haidt in mind, right? As you think about it. So to give some context to Srikantji's question, I think this is a very important thing that I do request everyone to be mindful of, especially if you have children, especially if they are in their, I suppose, tweens or teenagers. Social media gives rise to a lot of insecurity. Jonathan Haidt is a social science researcher and professor of sociology. He used to teach at NYU Stern, no, not Stern, NYU, in the psychology department or sociology department. And he's published numerous books, and his most recent research in the last few years has been on the impact of social media on children and how it has led to an increased amount of suicide rates, especially amongst girls. Um, because girls, teenage girls tend to feel more insecure about their looks. They tend to feel more insecure about um, whether they belong to a cool peer group, whether they are socially included or excluded in others. Because boys have a little bit more of an outlet, like when it comes to sports, or they can remove their aggression in a certain way. But girls have a greater sense of belonging to social groups. Now, what happens on social media is that, and this is so sad, but peop I mean, it's sad, but it's understandable. It's more like your resume or your biodata. You're going to put your best photo for that prospective bride or groom. You're going to, put your, best skill sets to work, and you're going to highlight, your achievements and accomplishments, not your failures on your resume. You're not going to be like on your resume, oh, I think I'm doing okay, but I used to be a failure in school and I failed in maths and I failed in this and all, but now I'm okay. Like you'll only highlight your, you'll put your best foot forward. On social media also, like, we'll put our best pictures up. We'll show the world how much we've traveled. You go on a holiday, you'll be sure to, have those cookie cutter monument pictures, whether it's the Eiffel Tower or whatever else, the Statue of Liberty, jo bhi hai, like, you will pose there just to make that, your cover photo, your profile picture. Now, what happens is you're not going to discuss all of the crap that is going on in your life, in other areas of your life, whether you had a bad day, whether you've been laid off from your job, whether you had a fight with your significant other. You're only going to put up pictures of the best life that you lead, and that's going to be your digital avatar that everybody will perceive to be who you are. Now, what happens is, suppose I live a normal life and you live a normal life, and everybody who's also on social media lives a normal life, because the average doesn't change much. The average is still the average. But if I suppose, what you consume, the impression that you consume of your peers through social media gives a sense of a more glorified life than yours. Because we see ourselves with the strengths and weaknesses that we possess, warts and all. But what we see in other people is only the best that they present. And therefore, indirectly, in relation to these other people, I will have a greater sense of insecurity. Now, this is with respect to one person. You flip that around, and now that person who's insecure will post the best of what they are because they don't want to feel excluded. And somebody else that they admired in turn will be the one feeling insecure as well. So, what social media does is it actually compounds and magnifies insecurity across all individuals who are on social media who are not mature enough. It would be criminal. Okay, now I would say I was one of the earliest Indians to get on Facebook. Like, this was way back in 2005, when you actually needed a college account to have a Facebook account. You needed a college email address, like US college. So, it started with Harvard and then Stanford and then a few other colleges, and finally rolled down to Georgia Tech. Like, we were one of, like, you had to be invited back then. So social media used to be, uh, how shall you say? It used to be an upper society thing way back in the early 2000s. It wasn't actually meant to be a platform where people can connect. It became that later. It used to be a social status thing. Social media was a social status thing. What ended up happening is, as it became democratized rather, because social media started off by those who were perceived and deemed as successful in society, the Harvard grads, the Stanford grads, the top echelon of society, it retained a sense of or it created a sense of peer pressure that for you to be cool and accepted, you also need to be on social media. And that slowly trickled down. Now, what happens is, social media also invaded our personal space. First, you needed to be behind a computer or a laptop to access social media. Now you have it on your smartphones, which are leading to dumb people. Smartphones lead to dumb people. It's a fact. Now, not only that, but it has also pervaded your uh, communication. Because first, social media used to be a place where you'll just post pictures. But now, guess what? You have WhatsApp Messenger, you have Facebook Messenger, and you have Snapchat, which is the worst of them all. And on Snapchats and some of these other chat tools, you can um, you can apply filters. So when you're video calling your friends or whatever, you can apply filters. So if you have blemishes on your face, guess what? You're looking like a Korean pop star, right? With this perfectly glazed look, no blemishes whatsoever. That like doll, you have like doll-like features. You can increase the size of your eyes, and you can change your cheekbones. You can raise your cheekbones. You can change your lip structure. All of these things. And so that again, when you talk to somebody else, you know that you feel that they are prettier than you, they are more successful than you, they have more friends than you, they are more connected than you, they are cooler than you. And so that leads you as an individual, as a teenager, to feel more and more and more isolated. And that has a direct effect on suicide rates. And so I don't remember the exact statistics, but I think suicide rates have increased by threefold, about 200 or 300% in the last 15 years. And this has exactly coincided with social media. Now, some people say that, oh, causation is not the same as correlation. That could be one more argument that, okay, maybe there's a correlation, but there's a confounding variable for those who are into research and whatnot. There's a confounding variable which may have led to heightened rates of suicide. That's not true. Because when you take away all of the factors that could be considered confounding variables, it is overwhelmingly clear that social media not only led to higher suicide rates, but when the age limit of social media was brought down from 21 to, I guess, 13 or 14, whatever it may be, that further increased suicide rates. And so these are not coincidences, but they are a direct causation. And what is the solution? Okay, I'm going to give some solutions now. If you have children, pay attention. If you don't have children, teach somebody else's children. First, um, don't give any child below the age of 16 a social media account. Apply those parental locks on their phone. Disable their exposure to social media until they are mature enough that they have found a peer group that they can meet in the real world, that they don't have to compare against on the virtual world. That's step one. Step two, to the extent that we can, as members or as participants on social media, please be real. Don't be fake. Try not to put in, oh, I checked into this restaurant or I checked into the airport. Nobody gives a damn. And all you're doing is you're creating more insecurity in somebody else who doesn't have the means to do those things. Please don't check in anywhere. Please share your vulnerabilities. I do this. You must have seen my social media account. I share vulnerabilities. If I'm going through a tough patch, if there's something that is amiss in life, last year, because of the tech crunch, I was laid off. I discussed it as well. I want to contribute to social media where I'm representing myself as a real person with some problems and with some strengths. But I also show that I have problems and you're not alone. Show people that life is not as perfect as these porcelain doll profile pictures may convey. Show them that life is real, both virtually and in reality. That will take away the pressure to belong or to conform to a certain narrative or a certain lifestyle or a certain whatever it may be. If you do these three things, it will directly impact your children or your grandchildren or somebody else's children for that matter. And I have a 5-year-old. I'm not going to give her a smartphone. I'm going to give her a dumb phone until she is 14 or 15 years old. She will only have the capacity to SMS me. Old style text message. Why? Because if there's an emergency, you only need to call somebody, you need to text somebody. And every single phone, regardless of your cell phone range or whether your card is dislodged or whatever, you can call 911. Every phone has an inbuilt security that you can call 911 anywhere you are, even if your signal is poor. So my child will get the most basic phone. When she hits let's say the last year of high school, she gets a proper smartphone. And you can't enforce this upon a child. You have to inculcate a certain value in them. I'm going to tell you this transparently. I have family friends. Okay, I'll try to be as vague as possible because this is personal to them. They have a perfect daughter, a perfect daughter. She's off. She completed her bachelor's. I think she went for a master's as well, and now she has a job. Perfect grades throughout school. Participated in sports. Did everything that you would expect a daughter to do. But now she's so sad in life, and she doesn't miss an opportunity to tell her parents that, hey, you tried so hard to make me excel at all the things that I do that I forgot what it meant to actually live life. That I am so competent across all of these subject areas, but I don't know what it is to enjoy life anymore. Like her vitality has been sucked dry. And this is something that Indian parents are notorious about. We try to live our unfulfilled dreams through some weird and warped measure of success that we want our children to achieve. So, so, so what? Why I'm saying this relates to social media is because the more you are real with your child, the more you are in touch with their feelings, with their inner harmony, the less will they feel the peer pressure, and the less prone will they be to run to social media to escape from their parents. If a child has to escape from the parents, social media is the obvious platform for them to go, because there they can maintain a certain level of anonymity where they can feel accepted. But if you don't allow the child to feel accepted at home, if you drill into their heads that you have to be that star student and you have to be an A plus child for the entire high school career or whatever it may be, and if you get a B minus, I'm going to question you all night. How could you miss such a simple answer on the exam? Don't be such a dog-headed parent to the child. Another example is last week 2 weeks ago, I'm sorry, we went to another family, not a family, friends, Ambika's five. She has a peer in her school. We went to meet her, their family, not not for any other reason except that the kids can play. So we went out for lunch. I'm not kidding you. The father was so OCD and so I was gonna I was gonna well, he was so anal about getting his son, to be a star student, that how he asked him to choose items on the menu. There was a menu, you have idli, dosa, samosa, all of these things. So the father said, I am going to select these items and I want you to select some items. And then we're going to create a Venn diagram, and whichever items match, those are the only things you can eat. And like throughout that entire conversation, I was like, you cannot turn every single thing into a tutorial for your child. Let your child order what he wants from the menu. Don't turn this into a math lesson. And like throughout, like he was correcting the child. He his phone was loaded with apps, like educational apps and this and that. I'm like, dude, screen time, bad idea. Teach your child something else. And that kid is so socially awkward. He doesn't know how to look you in the eye because he's been so grilled and intimidated by that boisterous and heavy-handed father that he's a mathematical genius, yeah, but he's a social failure, and he's not going to have a good girlfriend when he grows up. I mean, nobody would go out with a guy who can't look at you in the face and just looks down, because you're so intimidated by your father. So Indian parents have to tone down. And the more we are in touch and friendlier relationship that we form with our kids, they will not go to social media to escape. I guarantee you. Okay, so there's a question I see, Yashaswini ji. Moksha is already there with us. It's just a matter of knowledge that we have to realize it. Do you feel dhyana is helpful to attain the condition of mind when you end up feeling that you're already here? Excellent question. I'm going to give a 5-minute response to this. And then we'll close after this. There was an impression created by some teachers, well, particularly one teacher, and then it became percolated through a misled parampara, that there are 4 parts to moksha: dhyana, karma, bhakti, and jnana, knowledge. Depending on your disposition, any of these parts work. Doesn't work that way. Now, suppose I say dhyana. What is dhyana? Uh, Pujya Swamiji, Pujya Swami Dayananda Saraswati ji explains dhyana as Shaguna Brahma Vishaya Manasa Vyaparaha. See, this is the beauty that I've heard Pujya Swamiji so many times that I give people the false impression that I know Sanskrit. I, I've just, these expressions have just stuck in my head. Shaguna Brahma Vishaya Manasa Vyaparaha is the definition of dhyana. Shaguna Brahma. What is Shaguna Brahma? Ishvara. Vishaya means on the subject, on the topic, on the area of Ishvara. Manasaha, related to the mind, mental. Vyaparaha, transaction. Shaguna Brahma Vishaya Manasa Vyapara iti dhyana. Dhyana is the transaction of the mind on Ishvara. So what does that mean? Sometimes a person says, "Oh, it is Buddhist, or you have to empty your mind." Dhyana means you have to empty your mind. You have to empty it. You have to empty it. Empty करोगे तो क्या रहेगा? कुछ नहीं ना. You can't have a person who doesn't know who he or she is will enter a state of dhyana. Chalo, let's call it samadhi. And this way, and now the mind has become completely blank. And then they wake up. What is the result of that? Nothing. You're a peaceful person. Maybe the Puja Sabji jokes that people who do dhyana, maybe they'll spend a little less time fighting with people. That's a good thing. It will make you peaceful. I'm not belittling dhyana because dhyana is a big part of Sanatana Dharma. I'm just saying what it cannot give you. Dhyana cannot give you knowledge. Dhyana will give you a peaceful disposition. It will give you focus. It will give you some space to have deeper contemplations about the things that you study. But knowledge can only come from a means of knowledge. So that means, suppose I have to know the color blue, I cannot have I cannot have knowledge of the color blue unless I see a blue object. Dhyana can so therefore what is dhyana? And first of all, dhyana is not emptying the mind because it will not lead to much except for a temporary occasion of peace. Dhyana is not the means of enlightenment or moksha. In fact, enlightenment is a very bad word. It's not the means to moksha because moksha is the revelation of the knowledge of the self that is unfolded through a competent guru to an adhikari who is prepared to receive this knowledge. That is moksha, the knowledge of the self. Now, knowledge of the self can only come from a means of knowledge. Over here, the means of knowledge become the Upanishadic teachings or Vedanta, the teachings of Vedanta. And if you want to distill it at the very foundation, the means of knowledge is the Mahavakya, Tattvamasi Aham Brahmasmi, but not the words, the meaning of it, the deep seated meaning of that. So, therefore, dhyana has a different purpose. And the purpose of dhyana is to repeatedly contemplate upon Ishvara. Whether it's a mantra like Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya or Om Namah Shivaya or Om Saraswati Namaha, whatever it may be, to repeatedly transact upon Ishvara, whether it is the sound of Ishvara's name, which is a japa, or it could be the form of Ishvara, like the face of Ishvara, a certain form, as you have in your dhyana shlokas. Your dhyana shlokas, you're supposed to contemplate upon the entire prakriti, the entire visage of Ishvara, the face, the ornaments, the color of the skin, the vastram, the weapons, the astra, shastra, everything that is there in this traditionally defined form. You contemplate upon that in dhyana. You contemplate upon a sound and you keep repeating it over and over and over again until it becomes embedded. So this is what you call dhyana, which is a constant contemplation upon Ishvara. Now, if that dhyana is backed by knowledge of the self, that Shravanam has been done, and we'll get to Shravanam again because I know like this may be our first session, so we've not covered it in detail today. Shravanam is exposure to the teachings. Once that teaching has been exposed, I move the area of my contemplation from the form of Ishvara to the appreciation of the knowledge of the tattva of the swarupa of Ishvara, which is the self alone, which is Atma, which is Brahman, upon Satchidananda Atma. And when that moves from a certain form to the very swarupa, the dhyana is now what we call nididhyasana. But Nididhasanan presupposes that the Shravanam or the exposure to the knowledge has already taken place. But if we leave dhyana only at Shaguna Brahma Manasa Vyaparaha, then that will lead to Chitta Shuddhi. And Chitta Shuddhi is a specific state of the mind which is more receptive for knowledge to take place. Or it's also called Antakarana Shuddhi. Antakarana, you can see, is the mind, and Shuddhi is, for lack of a better translation, it is a purification process. And so, a mind that has been sufficiently purified is now ready to receive the teachings without any opposition, without any projection, without any contradiction, without any confusion. And it is able to imbibe those teachings and is able to uh, transform one's way of thinking and one's attitude and the way that one lives life so that the teaching becomes more and more rooted. That is the purpose of dhyana. But it cannot give rise to self knowledge. Self knowledge only comes from the exposure to the teaching. That's moksha. Excellent question.
But sir, something which has to be attained from inside, how can a knowledge from outside give it? Like moksha is something what we are already. We are Ishvara. But the thing is that something from outside, reading or this color is blue, knowing that. But moksha is not outside, na, it's inside already. So some knowledge from outside can, how can it take place towards moksha, towards self realization?
That's a very smart question. I just want to make one slight correction to the expression that we are Ishvara. No, our Swarupa and Ishvara Swarupa is the same. But the Jiva is not the same as Ishvara. The Jiva Swarupa is the same as Ishvara Swarupa. For example, the wave is not the ocean, but the
Hmm.
content of the wave, which is water, is the same as the content of the ocean, which is water. The Swarupa of the wave is the same as the Swarupa of the ocean. Same with the Swarupa of the Jiva is the same as the Swarupa of Ishvara, but the Jiva is not Ishvara. The Jiva is a manifestation of the totality of Ishvara. So that's just one small point as an aside. Now, coming to the actual question, moksha is not inside or outside. Because the moment we say inside or outside, it is inside with relationship to the physical volume of the body, outside with relationship to the physical volume of the body. And therefore, what we are doing is just as suppose you have space. The space is not actually bifurcated by the walls that we enact. Like if there's a wall behind me, it does not actually divide space. And therefore, from the standpoint of the wall, I'll say there's inner space, which is room space, and outer space, which is outside the room space. But then this, if the space is now defined as earth, then you say inner limit, and then you say outer limits, right? So
Hmm.
again, if we use the body as a measure for inside and outside, moksha is knowledge of the fact that I am not the entity who's confined to this physical mortal coil. The physical body is a bag of tissues and chemicals and cells, and it's like an internal plumbing work, like you have a plumbing system. It's just tubes and blood flowing through it. That's what the physical body is. But the knowledge of the self is not something that is present inside or outside, but the knowledge of the self is the dawning of the wisdom that all that there is, the truth of the self, the truth of the world, the truth of Ishvara, Jeev, Jagat, Ishvara, Swarupa, that alone is the self, and that I am. And that can only be unfolded through Guru Vachanam because the Guru is the one who is competent enough to be able to handle Shastra in a manner that can be unfolded to a Shishya who is competent enough to receive Shastra and committed enough to do the same. And because the knowledge of the self comes in the form of knowledge, you require a preceptor of knowledge and you require a receiver of knowledge. You require a knower and you require a known.
Hmm.
And when the knower and the known coincide, that is when knowledge takes place. And so at that point, the knowledge is neither present inside nor is it present outside, but knowledge alone is, and it only appears to manifest in our mind, but it actually has no locality. Knowledge is not local. Very beautiful. Sure. And
Got
you feel free to follow up if you because I just want to make sure that we are all uh, able to track
it.
along. So you're welcome to ask questions at any point.
Thank you. I
Sure.
will.
Wonderful. So I will close off. Om Namaste. See you all next week.